What's going on, guys? Welcome back into the channel. In today's video, I wanted to give you some of my biggest takeaways from the updated Dynasty mode within College Football 26 as it relates to what has changed from last year's game. There are some pretty substantial differences, some things that are going to be really notable whenever you are diving deeper into dynasties within College Football 26. So without further ado, let's jump into some of the major differences. The first things that I want to note are going to be settings and setup related towards Dynasty mode. Whenever you go into your league settings or you start a dynasty with your league settings, and it's not going to be on the screen here, but I want to talk quickly about the fact that you can now have your protected opponents, and I made another video on that. If you want to see exactly how to do that, go check that video out. It should be the last video right before this one. And you're able to set up to 2 protected opponents for your teams within Dynasty mode, for any team within Dynasty mode. And that's a really nice addition, being able to protect certain rivalry games, being able to protect certain opponents to ensure that they're on your schedule every single year is going to be really nice for the scheduling capabilities within the game. So you have some more flexibility, or rather some more options with scheduling within College Football 26, and it's really nice that they were able to add that. And then there are a few other things setting-wise that are different here. Some settings that they've added to the game that I think are actually going to be pretty useful. And I did want to quickly mention that if anybody over there is watching, we do need to add a play call cooldown separately for offense and for defense, because depending on what you're doing with your leagues, play call cooldown may or may not be able to be on, or should or shouldn't be on for one side of the ball versus the other. That's something we called for but did not get in this year's game. What we did get is manual progression capability and a setting to control manual progression XP penalty. Now, I have some feelings on this, and I'm curious to hear what you guys think in the comment section down below, but I actually think that this is reverse to what it should be. I understand the logic behind what they're doing. They're making it so that whenever you manually progress your players, you get less XP with those guys. And there's a setting here that you would have to turn on for auto progression or for not auto-progressing your players, and that determines whether or not for each individual user within your dynasty, whether you're going to get this progression percentage penalty. Personally speaking, I don't think that this should operate the way that it is. The theory behind this is that if you are manually progressing players, your players are going to end up being more balanced. They're going to be a little bit less focused in one area, where players are really good in one area and weak in other areas. And so you're being penalized for not allowing the system to do it for you and play players or progress players the way that the system is designed to progress them. Now, I don't necessarily agree with that. I actually think that you should get a XP penalty if you are auto-progressing players, because in my personal opinion, you should not be punishing the people that spend the time and effort to do things the right way and do things the realistic way. Because to be honest with you, yes, college football players very often are one-trick ponies or are very good at one thing and not the other, but they are always working to balance their game out. And that's the only way truly to become a professional football player after the college football level, is to balance out your game and fill in those gaps, fill in those voids. Now, you're not always going to be super successful at it. However, that's what the skill caps within the game are for. So looking at an offensive lineman as an example, even if I were to manually progress some of my offensive linemen, they're going to be more focused in one direction than the other regardless. And I can modify this maybe a little bit with skill cap breaking through coaching abilities, but that's not that consistent. It's not that predictable. And so if I were to upgrade this left tackle as an example, he's going to just be a pass blocking power offensive lineman. Do you see how many skill caps he has on run blocking? So just because I can manually upgrade him doesn't mean that he's automatically going to become a balanced player or become some type of demigod football player. That's just not how it works, because you have skill caps within the game. So in my opinion, there's almost 0 point to having a penalty to manually upgrading this guy. It just simply means that I can now choose to upgrade his pass blocking versus his power versus his IQ or his footwork or whatever, which doesn't really do anything as far as the concern that is potentially there for manually upgrading that player. And this is for 99% of the players within the game. Sure, you might end up with a quarterback like Lamaleva, I think is how you pronounce his name, where he doesn't have a whole lot of skill caps, but ultimately, if this guy auto-progressed, he's going to auto-progress up to his skill caps very quickly, and he's not going to be an unbalanced player even if he auto-progresses. So when you have those star and elite dev players, they're automatically going to become great and very well-rounded for the most part regardless. When you have those lower overall players, they're going to have a lot of skill caps and they're going to be very unbalanced 9 times out of 10. There just does not seem to be much true point to having a negative penalty percentage applied to people that want to manually progress their players. In fact, like I said, it should, in my opinion, be the opposite, where if you're lazy and only want to auto progress your players, you should get penalized for not putting in the time and effort to do things the right way. I will digress, however, and move on to the next subject because there's more to talk about, more to cover here. They did add some other really nice sliders that can make certain things within the game more viable, such as wear and tear. Having many wear and tear sliders to change the impact that things like tackles, that hit sticks and sacks and impact blocks have on the wear and tear of players, these sliders are awesome. Most people last year turned wear and tear off completely because of how severe it was. This now allows you to affect how severe wear and tear is and how quickly players recover from wear and tear. And we'll be making sliders videos for all this stuff, but I think this will be incredibly useful, and it'll take some time to find the real good sweet spot with all of it to make sure that you are actually seeing wear and tear and some effects from it, but it's not over the top. Those are really awesome sliders to have added into the game, so I will applaud them for having added that stuff into the game. They've also added some transfer portal settings, which most people probably aren't going to tweak very much. They start on a base of 55, and we've been playing with them lower and higher, and truly the base for it is really solid, but if you don't want to see very many transfers, you can reduce the number of transfers possible for a team. You can reduce the player and CPU transfer chances, or you can increase them. If you want to just see a ton of players out there in the portal, you would increase your max transfers per team as well as the transfer chance for player and CPU teams, which is another really cool addition to allow you to have some more control and variability within your dynasties. Another really cool addition to the sliders menu that a lot of people might miss if you're really not deep into sliders is the effects that weather can have on catching, tackling, kicking, and those types of things, where there are now sliders here to affect the impact that precipitation can have on your catching, your passing, your broken tackles, your kicking, and player movement, which is really cool. Another way to add variability and control over franchise mode and what's going on with weather conditions and how that affects the way things play within your dynasty. And I could see a lot of people turning these up in order to make those rain games really sloppy like they can get in real life. So I would actually be curious to hear so far with all of these new sliders and whatnot, what your guys' thoughts are down in the comment section below. Are they things you're going to mess with? Are you going to leave them base? Do you feel strongly one direction or the other as far as like precipitation and fatigue and those types of things are concerned, wear and tear? I don't know. We're going to play around with it and try to find a good sweet spot and give you guys some sliders on it that I think are a little bit realistic. Another change that I'm not sure if I like it or not so far within Dynasty Mode is the movement and change of some of the abilities for coaches. They made it so that the important recruiter traits are actually more expensive in the second tier of the recruiter archetype for your coach, because last year you were very easily able to get a recruiting advantage and recruit above your weight class by taking strategies that I recommended for you guys and bumping to, I think it was level 3 of most of the recruiter traits for the first segment of those traits. And that would be what is now in the second half here, where you get boosts to, your recruiting actions and their impact on players. You now have to spend 12 points per, and you have to get up to level 3 of the second tier ones in order to be able to have those bigger impacts on players and whatnot. And so your recruiting strategies are going to change this year, and you might not be able to punch as high above your weight class, and it really changes the dynamic of what you would even want to do with your coach. This year, it's going to be a lot more effective to just start as an existing coach depending on your team, because a lot of them start with the architect tree, which requires you to, as a base level coach, win 4 rivalry games, which can take you a while because you don't always have that many rivalry games on your schedule, which you can technically now impact with your protected opponents. Being able to add extra rivalry games to your schedule is nice, but you now have the access to increase random skill caps when leveling up and those types of things. You get a chance to increase a skill cap with a conference or national title. And so these can be more important for team building now, because it's going to allow you to build the players you have a little bit quicker. It's not going to take multiple years as a beginning level 0 coach to get to that. As I said, it's not quite as effective to go straight to the recruiter archetype as a coach. We'll play with it more and see what the most effective strategy is, but that leads me into my next topic, where it is actually much more viable to just build players up now and build a team up with lower end recruits. It's not necessary for you to always have to get the max number of 4 and 5 star recruits, because as years progress within Dynasty Mode, your players can actually develop better. And again, that takes me back to number 1, your ability to manually progress players and make them more viable in the long run. Being able to take a freshman tackle like Jensen Somerville here and make him more of the type of offensive lineman that I need him to be, as opposed to whatever the CPU wants to auto-generate for him. And players can go up in development traits now on a year-to-year basis, which is really, really important. The fact that players could not advance their development trait meant that whatever they were capped at as a freshman means they're pretty much capped at that no matter what. Whereas if I have some really good performances and I hit XP goals and whatnot with my various players, I can remove skill caps, I can upgrade that player substantially, and maybe they'll go up in a dev as well. Now, something to keep in mind, we've tested a little bit, is skill caps, while they are tied directly to a player's beginning development, do not really change when a player goes up in dev. So if Somerville here by some chance went up from impact to star, he would not have skill caps increased or taken away for him, however you want to phrase it. He would have the same skill caps unless you are affecting them through your coach's abilities. That is one thing that I think should change, because if a player goes up to star or elite, then their skill cap should also go up with it, because otherwise there's not that much point to them going up to star or elite. Now, when you start to combine some things together, like your coaching abilities and those dev increases and whatnot, then yeah, you can really start to build players a little bit better. But on just a basic level, it would make sense that if a player goes up to star or a player goes up to elite talent, there should be fewer overall skill caps, and they should be able to become a better player in general. And really the final thing that I wanted to discuss here today specifically is UI improvements that are really important to Dynasty Mode that we've been asking for. Now, I'm not 100% sure what exactly detail-wise wasn't here last year, but I remember last year you really had to search for things, whereas this year we were just talking about skill caps. This is just one example. Everything is where you would expect it to be, and you don't have to go diving around for a bunch of information. So when I'm looking at the skill caps for Jensen Somerville here, below his ratings, you will see not enough points, and you see it requires 5 skill points. And then right below that, it says architects can increase a player's skill groups with these abilities. CEOs can increase all skill group caps. etc., etc. So that's just one example of it showing you exactly what you need to know. If you want to increase the skill caps for this guy, these are the coaching abilities that you need in order to do that. Likewise, on pretty much every single screen, you are now able to see the information that you need to see. I can very easily scroll through my roster and see the dev trait of every single player. Again, it was a little bit wonky last year that certain pages you could see the dev trait, certain pages you couldn't see the dev trait. And then with something like your depth chart, you wouldn't necessarily be able to click into a player and see their information. Now you can click, even in your depth chart, you can click triangle on that player and view everything that you need to view about that player, as well as seeing it on the right side of the screen, being able to see directly on the depth chart page, hey, this guy's got elite dev, this guy's got impact. Boom, you have all the information at your fingertips that you could possibly need. I think that's true for recruiting as well, and like commitment day, where we talked about there were only certain times where you could see devs and whatnot. I think that there have been major improvements here to seeing the most important information where you need to see it so that you can make decisions quicker and more effectively. And on that note, as a final little tidbit for the UI, and the last thing I want to talk about is just the general information that you're getting, the general UI of recruiting and this entire process is improved. You're getting more arrows up and down, as you can see on the left side here, for whether my influence on a player is going up or going down. And there are other certain things that are popping up for players as well. And one of the really nice things to be able to see is my school. You have a little bit better, in my opinion, information here. I don't know what all changed. It just looks a little bit more clean and gives me a little bit better information on all of these different pages as to what I'm actually looking at and what I actually need as a team. Whenever you're actually looking at the prospects list, the team needs across the top are really clean. It's just a general better UI, and you see the information that you need to see where you need to see it. You don't have to flip from page to page and go try to find things and dive deep to try to find something that you would think would just be right there in front of your face. There hasn't been many times, if any times this year, that I've been testing and playing Dynasty that I'm like, oh, where's that bit of information? Let me go find this, let me go find that. No, it's like right there where I need it, and so I can make quick, informed decisions without having to do a whole bunch extra that you shouldn't have to do. And really, so far, those are the major improvements to Dynasty Mode that I kind of wanted to talk about. There are other things that are different. Those are some of the major ones that are really going to impact people early on into College Football 26. And like I said, with all of those topics, please leave your feedback down below. I'm curious what your thoughts are on all of those different topics. I know that there's going to be some debate about the XP reduction for manually upgrading players. You guys let me know. Do you agree with my take on it? Do you think that it really affects anything by manually upgrading them if the skill caps are already there to prevent you from making super OP or balanced players? I'm just curious what you guys think. Let me know down in the comment section below. Make sure you guys leave a like on this video if you like this type of video or this type of discussion. Subscribe to the channel if you're new around here or if you have not already. And as always, I'll see you guys in the next video. So I hope you have a good one.